She was a ghost in the machinery of the Citadel, the top-secret military installation buried deep beneath the Nevada desert. Her name, if anyone had bothered to ask, was Martha, but to the brilliant, arrogant minds of the Strategic Defense Initiative, she was simply the janitor. A stout, older woman with a face etched by time and hard work, she moved through the sterile, fluorescent-lit hallways with a quiet efficiency that rendered her nearly invisible. Her uniform was a drab grey, her hands perpetually curled around the handle of a worn mop bucket that squeaked a forlorn rhythm against the polished concrete floors. She was a fixture, a piece of moving scenery, and the scientists and soldiers who passed her daily looked through her as if she were a pane of glass. They dismissed her with averted eyes and muttered conversations held just loudly enough to be overheard, their words filled with complex algorithms and classified jargon, a language meant to reinforce the walls between their genius and her simplicity. They never noticed the way her eyes, a startlingly sharp shade of blue, missed nothing, tracking the movement of personnel, the blinking patterns of security keypads, the subtle shifts in the ventilation system's hum. They were too busy saving the world to see the woman who silently cleaned up after them. The air in the Citadel had been thick with a specific, metallic tension for weeks. A defector, a man named Ivan Rostov, had been brought in from the cold, and he was singing a song so terrifying it had frozen the blood in the veins of the four-star generals in Washington. He spoke of Sleeper, a deep-cover operative planted within the American intelligence apparatus decades ago, an agent so perfectly buried that they had access to the country's most sacred secrets, including the Citadel's primary function, not defense, but the development of a first-strike quantum disruptor, a weapon that could silence an entire nation's electronic infrastructure in the blink of an eye. Rostov, held in a maximum security cell 3 levels down, had provided details, clues, fragments of a profile, but the identity of Sleeper remained a ghost, a phantom haunting the corridors of the very facility they were betraying. Commander Jack Thorne, a man built like a slab of granite with a face that had seen too much war, felt the phantom's presence like a cold draft. His team of analysts, the best and brightest from MIT and Stanford, had scoured personnel files, financial records, and communication logs, coming up with nothing but dead ends and false positives. The pressure from the Pentagon was a physical weight on his shoulders, and the fear of a catastrophic security breach was a constant, gnawing companion. It was on the eve of the final debriefing with Rostov, the session meant to finally extract Sleeper's true identity, that the incident occurred. The Citadel was on its highest alert state, a silent, pulsing red light bathing the hallways. Martha was performing her nightly duties, mopping the hallway outside the central communications hub, her movements slow and methodical. Dr. Aries, a young, notoriously impatient physicist with a reputation for brilliance and condescension, was rushing from the hub, a tablet clutched in his hand, his mind clearly on the complex data he was about to present to Thorne. He didn't see the freshly mopped patch of floor, or he simply assumed the woman with the mop would magically evaporate from his path. His highly polished dress shoe hit the wet linoleum, and his legs flew out from under him. The tablet sailed from his grasp, shattering against the wall in a spray of glass and plastic. Aries landed with a heavy, undignified thud, his ego more bruised than his body. Rage, hot and immediate, contorted his features. He scrambled to his feet, his finger jabbing towards Martha. "You stupid old woman," he roared, his voice echoing in the cavernous hall. "Look what you've done. Do you have any idea how sensitive that data was? How much time you've just cost us?" Martha had stopped mopping, her posture stoic, her hand still resting on the mop handle. She didn't speak, didn't offer an apology or a defense. She merely looked at him, and in that look was a profound, unnerving stillness. "Security!" Aries screamed, his voice cracking with fury. "Get this janitor out of here! Get her out of my sight! She's a liability!" It was at that moment Commander Thorne emerged from the war room, drawn by the commotion. His brow was furrowed, his mind a whirlwind of tactical plans and security protocols. "What in God's name is going on out here, Doctor?" he demanded, his voice a low rumble that commanded immediate silence. Aries gestured wildly at Martha. This creature left a lake on the floor. She destroyed my tablet, Commander. We have a critical operation underway, and this kind of incompetence cannot be tolerated. I want her dismissed. Immediately. Thorne's eyes flicked from the frantic scientist to the silent janitor. She stood her ground, her gaze now lowered to the floor, the picture of subservience. But Thorne was a student of human behavior, a man who had learned to read the subtlest tells in interrogation rooms and on battlefields. He saw the absolute calm in her stance, the lack of the cowering fear he would have expected. It was out of place. His analytical mind, trained to spot anomalies, registered this one. He was about to order them both to stand down and return to their posts when he took a step closer to Martha, intending to simply get a subordinate to escort her from the secure area. As he moved, the overhead LED light in the hallway caught the side of her neck, just above the collar of her grey uniform. There, partly obscured by a fold of skin and the shadow of her hairline, was a tattoo. It wasn't a faded rose or a name of a lost lover, as one might expect. It was a small, intricate, and horrifyingly familiar symbol, a stylized wolf's head with a single, shattered fang, rendered in black and crimson ink. Thorne's blood ran cold. The air left his lungs. He knew that symbol. He had seen it only in the most classified of intelligence briefings, a file so dark it was known only by a code name, Sokil. The Sokil, or Falcon, was the insignia of the most elite, most secretive Spetsnaz unit ever formed by the Soviet Union, a unit so deniable it was believed to have been disbanded after the Cold War. Its members were ghosts, legends whispered in the halls of Langley and Vauxhall Cross. They were masters of infiltration, sabotage, and long-term deep-cover operations. And one of them was standing right in front of him, holding a mop. Time seemed to distort, stretching and compressing in that single, heart-stopping moment. Thorne's training kicked in, overriding the sheer, staggering disbelief. Every piece of the puzzle that had been Sleeper suddenly rearranged itself in his mind. They had been looking for a scientist, a soldier, an analyst. They had been looking for a man. They had never once considered the woman who cleaned their toilets and emptied their trash, the woman who had unfettered, unsupervised access to every room, every terminal, every wastebasket that might contain a discarded password or a crumpled note. Her simplicity wasn't just a disguise, it was a masterpiece of psychological camouflage. She wasn't just hiding in plain sight, she was living in their blind spot. Thorne's hand, which had been resting casually on his sidearm, now tensed. His voice, when he finally spoke, was deceptively calm, a stark contrast to the storm raging inside him. "Dr. Aries," he said, his eyes never leaving Martha. "Stand down." "That's an order." Aries spluttered, "But Commander, I said stand down," Thorne repeated, the steel in his voice leaving no room for argument. He took another slow, deliberate step towards the janitor. Her eyes met his then, and the transformation was instantaneous. The dull, subservient veil lifted, replaced by a cold, calculating intelligence that was as sharp and deadly as a razor. She was no longer Martha. She was Sokil. Elizaveta Petrova, Thorne said quietly, using the name from the file he had committed to memory. Code name, Sokil. The broken fang. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. It held no warmth, only a lifetime of secrets and a chilling pride. "You have done your homework, Commander," she replied, her voice no longer the faint, mousy whisper he had occasionally heard before. It was low, confident, and carried a faint, untraceable accent. "Though it seems you are a few decades too late." Around them, Thorne's security team, sensing the seismic shift in the atmosphere, had drawn their weapons, forming a loose, tense circle around her. She seemed utterly unconcerned, her grip on the mop handle the only sign of tension. "The defector, Rostov," Thorne continued, piecing it together aloud. "He wasn't just giving us clues. He was your contingency. Your dead man's switch. If he talked, we would be looking for a phantom, chasing our tails, while you were right here, listening to everything." Her smile widened slightly. Ivan was always sentimental. He thought he could outrun his past. I knew better. I knew they would find him, and I knew he would talk. His information was designed to lead you in circles, to make you paranoid of your own shadows.